Hello and welcome to the USA breaking news on 13th July 2026. Global oil prices jumped by more than 4% on Monday after renewed military clashes between the United States and Iran heightened fear of disruptions to oil shipment through the strategic virtual Strait of Hormuz. A Brent crude price climbed by $3.10 or 4.8% to $79.11 per barrel during Monday morning trading as investors reacted to the worsening security situation in the Middle East. The sharp increase comes amid growing concern that the escalating conflict and severely disrupted the transportation of crude oil and other key commodities through the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's busiest maritime energy routes. The latest escalation follows a fourth consecutive day of US military strikes targeting several locations across Iran on Sunday. In a response, Iran's Revolutionary Guards announced on Monday that they had launched attacks against USA military bases in Kuwait and Bahrain, raising fear of broader regional conflicts. Before the conflict erupted in the late February, nearly 20% of the world's oil and natural gas supplies passed through the Strait of Hormuz, making the waterway critical to a global energy market. Shipping activity has already shown signs of slowing, according to vessel tracking firm Kepler. Only 6 ships transited the Strait of Hormuz on Sunday, marking a significant decline compared with the traffic recorded over the previous 5 weeks. The renewed hostilities have also cast doubt on the future of temporary agreement between Washington and Tehran that aimed to reopen the virtual shipping route and halt the fighting following negotiations expected to last 16 days. Energy market analysts warned that oil prices could continue rising if tensions between the two countries intensify further, increasing the risk of supply disruption and adding pressure to the global economy. Iran has warned the Arab countries across the Middle East that they could face retaliatory attacks if their territories continue to be used by the United States for military operation against Iran as the conflict between the two nations intensifies. The warning comes after the United States carried out 4 consecutive days of airstrikes targeting multiple locations inside Iran, further escalating tension in the region. In a response, Iran launched missile and armed drones at USA military installation in Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and Oman, signaling significant expansion of the conflict beyond Iranian territory. In a statement issued by Iranian's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Tehran condemned what it described as aggressive and unlawful attacks by the United States. The ministry said Gulf nations should not allow their territories to become illegal and criminal or were aimed at destabilizing Iran. Iran urged neighboring countries to uphold their obligation under international law by preventing foreign power from using their territory, military facilities, or infrastructure to launch attacks against the Islamic Republic. A foreign ministry spokesperson Ismail defended the Iranians' military action, insisting they should not be viewed as an act of aggression, but rather as the legitimate self-defense under international law. He said the strikes on USA military bases across the southern Gulf region were direct response to continued American attacks. Meanwhile, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres called on all parties to exercise maximum restraints and avoid actions that could further inflame the crisis. He urged immediate diplomatic efforts to reduce tension and prevent a wider regional The latest escalation follows months of fragile diplomacy. The conflict began after USA and Israel strikes on Iran on February 28, 2026, although both sides later agreed to ceasefire in April and signed broader understanding on June 17. Fighting resumed after disagreement over the implementation of the agreement and the future of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has since announced restriction on commercial shipping through the strategic waterway, describing the move as a response to continued military operation by the United States and Israel. The Strait of Hormuz remains one of the world's most critical routes for global oil and energy supplies, raising a concern that prolonged instability could have far-reaching economic consequences. A severe heat wave that swept across Europe in late June has claimed the lives of more than 10,000 people in just 1 week, with other adults accounting for the vast majority of the fatalities, according to newly released data. Health officials reported that 10,615 people died between June 22nd and June 28, 2026, when extreme temperature affected much of the continent, including France, Spain, the United Kingdom, and several other European countries. Data collected from 27 European nations show that more than 9,000 of those who died were aged 65 or older, highlighting the heightened vulnerability of elderly population during a period of extreme heat. A medical expert warned that prolonged exposure to high temperature can trigger heat stroke, dehydration, and other life-threatening conditions, while also worsening existing heat and respiratory diseases. Older people and individuals with chronic illness remain among those at greatest risk. Researchers said they found no evidence of another major public health emergency such as COVID-19 outbreak that could explain the sharp increase in death during the same period, strengthening the link between the fatalities and the extreme weather. The record-breaking heat wave also disrupted the daily life across Europe. Electricity supplies come under pressure. Several schools were forced to close, and the new temperature records were set in part of France, Spain, and the United Kingdom. Among the hardest hit countries were France and Belgium, with the Belgium recording its highest number of heat-related deaths since nationwide monitoring began in 2000. A separate study also found that around 2,500 people died from heat-related causes in England and Wales during May and June, underscoring the growing public health risks associated with increasingly frequent and intense heat waves. Scientists have reportedly warned that climate change is making extreme heat events more common and more severe, prompting renewed calls for government to strengthen heat preparedness plan and implement protections for vulnerable communities. South Korea has asked North Korea for assistance in locating a Navy officers who went missing near the maritime border between the two countries as efforts continue to find the missing servicemen. The request was delivered through the text message sent to reporters because there is a current no direct communication channel operating between the two Koreas, according to South Korea Ministry of Unification, which handled inter-Korean relations. The ministry said the message was addressed to the North Korea authorities. According to reporters by Reuters, in the message, South Korea stated that Seira disappeared by July 12, 2026, while carrying out a coastal security mission in the East Sea, also known as the Sea of Japan. Officials say that there was possibility that strong current may have carried him across the mountain boundary into North Korea's water. The boundary referenced is Northern Remit Rhine, a disrupted maritime border separating the waters controlled by South and North Korea. South Korea's Ministry of Unification called for humanitarian cooperation, saying that while its Navy continues such operation, it hopes North Korea will assist in locating and safety returning the missing officers. The appeal comes as South Korea President Lee Jae-myung administration has sought to reduce tension with Pyongyang since taking office last year. However, repeated attempts by Seoul to reopen dialogue with North Korea have been rejected. A relationship between the two neighbors remains deeply strained, with North Korea declaring in 2024 that South Korea is a principal enemy and showing a little willingness to resume a diplomatic engagement. That's all for now. Thank you for watching.